When you're starting out in your career, it can kind of feel like you're walking on a tightrope, right? Like every decision feels huge.
Yeah.
Like one wrong step and it's all over. And I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that feeling.
Absolutely.
It's that fear of messing up, that fear of failure that just kind of looms over everything.
I think it's something we all grapple with to some extent.
For sure, for sure. And what's interesting is that this whole concept of failure, it wasn't always this big, scary monster that we've made it out to be.
Right. It's interesting that you bring that up because this whole concept of failure wasn't always the monster we've made it out to be.
And actually, I was reading this book, An Interview with Failure by Sam Yankelevich.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it.
Okay. So he actually does this really cool thing where he interviews failure. Like it's a guest on a podcast.
That's a cool concept.
Yeah, it sounds a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it really makes you rethink this whole idea.
I think it's a brilliant way to confront this fear head on. And what I found fascinating about the book is that it actually delves into the history of the word failure.
Okay.
And it reveals that originally it simply meant an opportunity or a gap to be filled.
So like a blank canvas?
Almost. Exactly. Like a blank canvas. Not this big red X that we often imagine.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was neutral. It wasn't this loaded weapon that we use against ourselves.
It's true. It's like we've given it so much power.
Right. Over time, societal pressures and expectations have really warped it into this scary thing that holds us back.
Yeah, you're right. It's not really about avoiding failure then. It's more about how we view it.
You hit the nail on the head. The book really emphasizes that point. It encourages you to define success on your own terms.
Yeah.
Not based on some external yardstick or societal expectations.
I like that. So what might look like a failure to one person
Exactly.
could be a stepping stone for someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective.
Okay, so it's all about perspective.
Yeah.
So like my definition of success might be totally different from yours, and that's perfectly fine.
Exactly. And that's where this idea of reframing failure as feedback comes in.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
Can you break that down a bit? Like, how did that work in real life?
Sure. So there's this great story in the book about a spa owner who was really struggling to get her business off the ground.
Okay.
She could have easily just called it quits and said, I'm a failure.
Right.
But instead, she used the lack of clients as data.
Interesting.
She asked herself, what's not working? What can I change?
So she took that failure and turned it into a learning experience.
Exactly. She analyzed what wasn't resonating with potential clients. She adjusted her services, and eventually she turned things around.
Wow.
It's about extracting those valuable lessons from setbacks.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of when you're a kid and you're learning to walk. You fall down a ton.
Right?
But you don't just decide walking is a failure and give up.
Exactly.
You get back up, you adjust, and eventually you're running around. It's kind of that same spirit, but applied to your career.
Yeah. I love that analogy. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so it's like you're constantly learning and growing from those experiences.
Absolutely. And that's the key takeaway here. It's not about being afraid to fall. It's about learning to get back up stronger and wiser each time.
I think that's a really empowering message, especially for those who are just starting out in their careers. It's like giving yourself permission to stumble, to experiment, to learn from those mistakes.
Absolutely.
And you know what? I think that takes a lot of the pressure off.
For sure.
That pressure of needing to have it all figured out from day one.
Right. Because let's face it, none of us do.
Yeah. We're all just figuring it out as we go.
Exactly. And that's okay. It's part of the process.
So it's like this journey of continuous learning and growth.
And the more we embrace that, the more we can unlock our true potential.
I love that idea of unlocking our true potential through embracing failure.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I'm curious to hear more about this idea of taking ownership, because you touched on that earlier.
Yeah, that's a crucial aspect of reframing failure.
Okay, so let's dive into that next.
Sounds good. Let's explore how taking ownership can empower us to learn and grow from those inevitable setbacks.
Because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Absolutely. Especially when we're feeling vulnerable or unsure of ourselves.
Yeah, it's easy to blame external factors or other people.
Right.
But when we take ownership, we take back our power.
Exactly.
And that's when real growth can happen.
I couldn't agree more. So let's unpack that a bit further and see how we can apply this concept to our own lives.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right.
I'm excited to keep exploring this with you.
Me too.
This is fascinating stuff.
It really is.
And I think it's something that can benefit everyone, no matter where they are in their journey.
I completely agree.
This is great.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going.
Okay, let's do it. So When we talk about taking ownership, I think one of the first things to remember is that you're going to face setbacks. You're going to make decisions that just don't pan out the way you hoped. They just don't work out.
Right. And I think that's something that's really hard to accept,
It is.
especially when you're starting out,
Yeah,
because you feel like you have to have it all figured out.
I do.
But the truth is you don't.
You really don't. And it's okay.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, that's where the book's message really shines. It highlights this idea of taking ownership instead of blaming external factors or calling yourself a failure.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that you have the power to shape your own path.
Okay, so it's about owning your choices.
Yeah.
Even the ones that maybe didn't lead to immediate success.
Exactly. And that shift in mindset is crucial. It moves you from feeling helpless to feeling empowered.
Right, because if you feel like you have no control, then what's the point?
Exactly. You start to see that you can learn from those experiences and adjust course.
Yeah.
You're not stuck.
But what about that fear? Like, what about that fear of making the wrong decision?
It's real.
Because sometimes it feels paralyzing.
It does.
Like, it's almost better to do nothing than to risk messing up.
Yeah, and I get it.
Especially when you're early in your career and you feel like the stakes are so high.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Would you rather be stuck in analysis paralysis, constantly second-guessing yourself?
Right.
Or would you rather take action, even if it means making a few missteps along the way?
I see your point. Because if you're always second-guessing yourself, you're never actually going to move forward.
Exactly. You'll be stuck.
So it's almost like choosing to stay on the sidelines versus getting in the game.
That's a great way to put it.
You might not score every time, but at least you're learning and growing.
And getting closer to your goals.
Exactly.
The book uses this great analogy of water.
Okay.
Water doesn't resist change. It adapts. It flows around obstacles. It finds new paths.
So it's not about having a perfect plan from day one.
No.
It's about taking those first steps, even if they're a little shaky,
Exactly.
and being open to learning and adjusting as you go.
And that adaptability is essential, especially at the start of your career. When it's a time for exploring different paths, experimenting, and figuring out what truly resonates with you.
And I love that image of water because it reminds me that we don't have to be rigid or afraid of the unknown.
Right. We can be flexible, like water.
And there's something really powerful about that.
There is.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think one of the most powerful parts of the book is the ending.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
So at the end of the book, the Hostam, he actually tears the word failure out of his dictionary.
Wow.
It's this really symbolic act.
It is.
Like he's reclaiming his power from this word
Yeah.
that has held him back for so long.
That image really stuck with me. It's like saying, I'm not going to let this word define me anymore.
Exactly. It's so powerful.
And that's the invitation the book extends to all of us. It challenges us to redefine what failure means to us, to see it not as an endpoint, but as a valuable part of the journey.
So it's not about erasing failure from our lives.
No.
It's about changing how we relate to it, how we use it to fuel our growth.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that when you shift your perspective like this, you start to see that the things you once feared might actually be the key to unlocking your full potential.
That's a really cool idea.
Isn't it?
That the things we fear the most could actually help us grow the most.
Absolutely. It's like those stumbles, those setbacks, they become opportunities for learning,
Yeah,
for growth, for becoming even stronger and more resilient.
I like that. That's a good way to think about it.
And it's funny because we often celebrate those who have achieved great success,
Right.
but we rarely acknowledge the countless failures that they must have encountered along the way.
It's true. We tend to focus on the highlight reel without recognizing all the hard work, the setbacks, the detours that were part of the process.
And all the failures.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, everyone fails.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
No one.
Hmm.
So maybe the real lesson here is that it's not about avoiding failure, it's about learning to embrace it.
Right? To see it as a necessary ingredient in the recipe for success.
And not just tolerating it, but actually seeking it out in a way.
Wow, now that's interesting.
Because it's in those moments of challenge, of adversity, that we discover our true strength and resilience.
I think that's a really powerful message, especially for those of us who are just starting out. It's like we're being given permission to stumble, to experiment, to learn from our mistakes.
Exactly. And it takes the pressure off of needing to have it all figured out from day one.
Which is a relief because, let's be honest, none of us do.
No, not at all. It's about shifting the focus from being perfect to being courageous.
All that.
From avoiding failure to embracing the journey.
Right.
With all of its twists and turns.
So if you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed by the fear of making the wrong move, just remember this.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
You're not.
Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone faces setbacks. It's part of the process.
Absolutely. The key is to not let those experiences define you.
Right. Don't let fear paralyze you. Take that first step, even if it feels shaky.
Even if it feels terrifying.
And trust that you'll figure it out along the way.
You will. You're more capable than you think.
So powerful. Because in the end, it's not about avoiding failure. It's about learning to dance with it, to use it as fuel for your growth, as a springboard for your success.
And that's where the true magic happens. When you embrace the journey, the stumbles and all, you unlock a level of resilience and resourcefulness you never knew you had.
And that's what will truly set you apart on your path to achieving your goals.
Absolutely.
I don't know about you, but after really diving deep into this book, I'm feeling a lot lighter. Like that pressure to be perfect, it's eased up a bit, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing how just shifting your perspective a little bit can have such a huge impact. It's like we've been carrying around this heavy baggage of failure for so long, and now we're finally starting to unpack it.
Yeah. And the coolest thing is, this isn't just some like abstract concept, right? We're talking about actual strategies, things you can do to reframe failure and use it to your advantage.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes this book so powerful. It's not just some pep talk. It gives you a roadmap for dealing with those challenges you're going to face in your career. It's inevitable.
Yeah, for sure. So for anyone listening out there who's just starting their journey, just remember, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, you really don't. And in fact, it's those imperfections, those stumbles that you have along the way that make the journey so valuable. They teach you to be resilient, resourceful, adaptable. And those are skills that you'll use throughout your whole career.
I like that.
Yeah.
And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of learning to walk. When you're a kid, you fall down a bunch, but you don't just decide walking is a failure and give up.
Right. You keep going. You get back up. You try again.
Exactly. It's about having that same kind of spirit, that perseverance, but in your work life.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny because we often look up to people who are really successful, but we rarely think about all the times they probably failed along the way.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. It's like we forget that failure is a normal part of growing and learning.
It's essential. It's like if you were trying to learn to ride a bike, but you never fell off. You wouldn't learn how to balance. You wouldn't develop the skills you need to get better. Those moments of failure, they're what help you succeed in the end.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So basically, next time you run into a problem or things don't go your way, just remember, it's not the end of the world. It's a chance to learn and grow and come back stronger.
Exactly. And, you know, here's something to think about. What if you could just get rid of one word from the dictionary, a word that's holding you back? What would it be?
That's a good question. What word would you get rid of?
And what word would you put in its place? Something that would help you achieve your goals. Something that would make you feel powerful and excited.
Because at the end of the day, you have the power to change your story, to change how you see things. You're in control of your own success.
Yeah, go out there, explore new things, don't be afraid, and build a future that's full of meaning and passion.
And remember failure. It's not the opposite of success. It's how you get there. It's part of the process. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.